G'day. Well, I've got a couple of Commodore C128s, and for the life of me I can't find a power supply for them. I've got heaps of power supplies like this Amiga one here, which look tantalisingly close to the power supply you need, though these are not compatible with C128s and likely to do damage to them. The thing stopping me from doing anything with these 128s has been that you can't get that plug, or you couldn't until relatively recently. Somebody started selling them again, so I ordered one of those. And I was going to build a power supply from scratch with a 2.5 amp 5 volt rail, which is what they require, and a 1 amp 9 volt AC line as well. Then I realised, well, the Commodore 64 power supply is pretty close to that. The 5 volt rail is not as high current, but because I've built a beefed up C64 power supply, I thought I'll just do an adapter. The 9 volt rail is the same for both machines, but the as I said, the 2.5 amps is required for the 128. The new C64 power supply has got that, so I thought instead of making a new supply, I'll do an adapter. Here's the female for the DIN plug that will go on the end of the C64 power supply, and then there's the male that goes into the 128. A lot of people have had other workarounds for this. They've replaced the power connector on the C128 for something that's a little easy to get. I reckon a lot of people have probably chopped the cords off Amiga power supplies, and I reckon there might be a few 128s out there that have been damaged. I'd have to look at the pin out to see whether any of the voltage that are applied on the Amiga power supply go to a sensitive spot on the 128. So the Amiga's got minus 12 volt rail and all sorts of things. So yeah, not a good idea. Even though they look exactly the same, the power supplies are identical. I went through so many of these through all my boxes of power supplies and stuff, and not one of them looked like a 128 supply. So that's why we are doing what we're doing. If this works, it should be a fairly easy mod for people to do. It's actually a trivial thing. Most pretty hardcore vintage computer restorers would think this thing's not even worth doing a video about, because it's quite simple. 5 volt ground, a couple of wires for AC, join them up to the right pins and off you go. But anyway, I looked on YouTube, and not many people have actually done this on YouTube, so in fact I didn't find anyone. Maybe there are. So I thought I'd give it a go. Alright, and I put it together. Okay, I've just soldered up the C64 at the side of the adapter, the C64 power supply side. So I'm just going to check it. Now I'm using one of these power supplies, you know, the sort that you never plug into a real 64. This one still reckons it's putting out the right voltages. So let's plug that in. I've got it currently on, so the red wire there, that is pin 5 for the 5 volts. The black there is the ground for the 5 volts, which is pin 2. And we should get close to 5 volts DC on the meter there. Just plug it in. Hopefully this power supply doesn't blow up my face. There we go. So that power supply is probably pretty good, but I still wouldn't trust it on a 64. So that's the 5 volt side. Okay, I'll just switch that over. AC there. I'll go to the AC rail, which is pins 6 and 7 of the plug. And what do we got? There we go. Yeah, unloaded 9 volts. It says 10 volts, but you know, there's no load on it. So I think the pin out that side's right. So what I'll do is I'll solder up the C128 side. I'll probably put some heat shrink over that as well, and just to keep it. I didn't have any 4-core cable to use, so I'm just going to make it up with these separate wires and test that as well, and then I don't know, go and try and plug it into a 128, one that's never been powered up since I've owned it, so it probably doesn't work anyway, but hopefully it's not because of the power supply in that case. Anyway, we'll give it a go. There it is, almost done. So what I'll do now is I'll just put the rest of it together. Remember to put this stuff on before you terminate it. And times I've had to redo it because of forgetting these things. I'll double check the pinouts. I think I'm going to look at a few more online sources of the pinouts just to make sure the one I followed is consistent with all of them. I don't want to destroy a Commodore 128. Yeah, and then I might even open up the 128 and just check it against, bell it out end to end onto the various parts of the board. Should be pretty obvious where the 5 volts goes in and where AC goes in on the board. It is on a 64, which I've opened up plenty of times. Haven't opened up too many 128s. Yeah, and then see how it goes. Hopefully the machine I'm going to test with works as well. Apparently they're hard to fix, 128s. A pretty complicated machine with the 3 modes of operation and all that. Anyway, I'll put it together mechanically, this bit, and see how it goes. Well, the plot thickens a little bit because there's contradictory information online about the pinout of the ground rail. What I'm using, some sites call the shield ground. I've belted out on the actual power connector on the 128, which is what you got in front of you there, the back end of it anyway. And they're the same, so they're shorted together inside the machine. So I'm going to keep the same pinout that I had, even though other sites say that's just a shield ground. They're electrically connected, so I'm going to go with it. I was thinking about a way of verifying all the other rails, and I realised that the user port, which is this port here, has all the DC and AC lines coming out. So for instance, I'm currently in pin 2 of the Commodore 64 adapter side, and that should come out on pin 2 of the user port too, coincidentally. And actually I'm on pin 5, so I'm on pin 5 of the Commodore 64 side, and I'm going to pin 2 of the user port. And if I get this right, there you go, continuity. So I'm going to check all the other rails as well, and I think that'll make sure that everything's safe to power this thing on. It's a pretty grubby computer. I haven't really looked at it in much detail, but give it a bit of a clean up. But today I might even try powering it on. Fingers crossed it works. But anyway, that's a good way to verify that the adapter's correct. We already verified the Commodore 64 side because I had it plugged into a Commodore 64 power supply, checked all the voltages there were correct. Now we've built the 128 adapter side, and the only way really to test it end to end is to actually see where the machine's routing those voltages. If it all looks correct, then you're going to be safe to power it on. And so that's what I'm doing. So there's, sorry for the messy bench, there's the adapter there, there's me probing the 5 volt input on the 64 adapter side, or the 64 power supply end I should say, going into the 128, nice yellow 128 there, and then the user port there where all the voltages are made available. So for instance 5 volt comes out on pin 2, which is on the, all these voltages are on the top row, so pin 2 is the second from the right, second from the left on the top. Ground is on pin 1, and the AC lines come out on pins 10 and 11 on the right hand side of the top row of that port there. Anyway, if the adapter works and the 64 works, I'll take a photo of that. But if not, well then there might be a video on how to fix Commodore 128s, and hopefully it's not because I let the smoke out, but the smoke came out years ago. These things are like 35 years old now. Alright, thanks. Okay, I've got the adapter connected. I'm using the power supply that I've shown before. This one's got the new switch mode power supply for the DC 5 volt rail. This computer's not been turned on since I've owned it, so here we go. Switch on. And I don't even get a power light. Oh well. Could it just be the switch? No. Alright, oh well. There's the power LED. Not even coming on. Yep, everything's turned on. This should be working. What a disappointment. After all that. No, dead as a doornail. Bugger. Alright, maybe I'll have to open this 128 up. I'm pretty sure the adapter's right. I traced it all the way through to the I/O port, or the user port I should say, on the back. So something else going on in here. Alright, might pull it apart, see what's going on. Might just be a dicky switch. I've got a Commodore 64 in this room somewhere that has a similar thing with the power switch being a bit iffy, so could be something like that too. It's just the last bit for this video on this adapter. Yeah, the power switch on the 128 was a bit dicky. Sprayed in some contact cleaner and seems to be working better now, but I still don't get the power light. I do get 5 volts on the user port, and when I turn it on, the monitor thinks it's getting some sort of power signal there. Well, that's still a black screen, so yeah, 128's dead. I'll open it up a bit more and have a bit more of a poke around, but I think the adapter's working, so that'll be it for the adapter. Next is getting that thing working. Well, it would have been obvious to me if I'd looked at this computer any more closely before I started trying to get it working, that this thing was broken. Every single screw was had already been removed, God knows how long ago. I didn't do it, so whoever owned it before me, and I don't remember where I got this machine from, so I could have had it for 20 years for all I remember now. So yep, it's been a problem that somebody probably gave up on and put it up on a garage sale or something, and then I bought it back in the 90s or whatever. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, the LED on the keyboard was removed, so the LED connector was removed, so that's why the LED wasn't coming on. But anyway, I've got the voltages where I need them. I've got a black screen, so now I have to learn a little bit more about how the C128 works. They're a complicated beast. One of the reasons is they have one of these things. What is this doing on a Commodore machine? That's a Z80. Interesting stories about that. So if you look up Bill Herd, that's Bilherd. He's the guy who designed this thing, and he'll tell you why that's there, and all the other very interesting things about this machine. Probably the last gasp for 8-bit computers in the world, and probably the best 8-bit computer ever made, because it does so much. It's a Commodore 64, it's a Commodore 128, it's a CPM machine, and they're pretty cool, but I've been told they're hard to fix, so who knows if I'm going to fix this, but I'll give it a go. Alright, thanks for watching, bye.